Maestro is the movie directed by Bradley Cooper, also starring Bradley Cooper as the famed composer, musician, Leonard Bernstein. And this is like, I don't know if I want to officially call this a biopic. I guess you could kind of do that.
Why would it
Um,
not be one?
the only reason why I'm saying that is because Carey Mulligan herself is saying it's not. I read an interview
Okay.
recently where she's saying that it's you shouldn't look at this as a biopic. Look at this more as a drama of a family or drama of a relationship or something like
Gotcha.
that. But it's
Is it
based
because they're
off
saying it's
of.
not true to the life, or is it because they're saying it's doing more than that?
I think
There's the movie Spinster, right, where they were like, no, we're just kind of taking a character who exists in the public consciousness, a
right.
famous person, Lady Diana, and then making a whole thing out of it. Is it
Yeah.
more like that, or is it that they're just saying it's a mostly true story but transcends? That's
I
such a
think
weird,
it.
interesting thing to
Yeah,
say
I
because I
think
think it's
it.
technically a biopic.
Yeah, I think it's because in her opinion, it transcends what a typical biopic is like.
Okay, I'm
Um,
not listening to Carey Mulligan on this. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
it's it's it's
That is
fine.
just because your movie is more than a biopic doesn't mean it's not a biopic.
It's
But
fine.
okay,
She's trying to say that it's a very artful thing, and she doesn't want to
it is
tie it to that genre of a biopic because I think
right.
we are so accustomed to biopics being like kind of dull and boring and kind of straightforward and all that kind of stuff. You know, I guess maybe in her opinion, a movie like JFK and this are very different, but yet they're within the
Right.
same category, and she doesn't want that. I don't know. Who knows? The artist that
This
she
movie
is.
does play with the genre too, but we'll get into
Yeah,
that
no,
as we talk more
definitely.
about how they handle that.
Yeah, but yeah, like I said, like it is. Bradley Cooper plays Leonard Bernstein. Carey Mulligan plays Felicia Montague or Montealegre. Sorry, who eventually becomes his wife, and pretty much talks about their relationship, but also the rise of himself as a composer and how that dynamic affects not only the relationship but how it also affects the family as a whole, and goes off into all those things like that. Anything that we say here shouldn't be a spoiler because this is an actual person. This is stuff that's been already documented for years and years and years. Maybe some of the sexuality parts of it hasn't been fully documented officially. Or maybe if you're a fan of Leonard Bernstein, maybe you don't know a lot of that stuff. So maybe a lot of those revelations could be a surprise to you, but they do go into that. It does play like very heavy role on. You also have Maya Hawke that plays the oldest daughter, the oldest child, Jamie Bernstein, and then you have other people in here as well. It follows. It starts. The movie starts off as an older Leonard reflecting on the past in a way, and then it kind of kicks into the early years, and then it basically goes chronological from there. And then they do a very interesting thing where they film it based off of the films that you would have seen in that period. Where in the 40s and 50s everything is black and white. Once we get into the late 60s, 70s, then we finally get the technicolor look of the film, and then so on and so forth. So I thought Bradley did a really interesting choice there, and I thought it worked really well. You could tell Bradley is just a fan of old Hollywood because that's how he approaches his filmmaking. We saw this already in A Star Is Born. Now we're seeing it again in this one. I feel like he's even more so in this one, where it's like a big tribute to not only Hollywood and old style of filmmaking, but obviously you're paying tribute to one of the greatest composers around. So sound and music play a heavy part in this film, which really, really transforms well. I will say that if you do get a chance to see this in the theater, you must see this in a theater suited for sound, because the concert performances, especially this one in particular where he performs at St. Patrick's Cathedral, which is probably the opus performance of the film, it brought me to tears. That's just how impactful and powerful the music was. And you could tell like they paid so much attention to the sound and music to make it right. According to the sound designer, they wanted these performances live to film. So what we are seeing on film was performed live as they were shooting it. So this wasn't like a pre-recorded thing that they added in the sound later on. They performed live to film. So Bradley wanted that feeling of watching this live for the first time like that, like how everyone else would have experienced it. So I thought that was a great choice, and it you felt it. It was very impactful that way. I enjoyed this film immensely. Everyone who knows me knows already my experience with A Star Is Born. So I still need to revisit that, especially that given that that was like his directorial debut. I feel like it needs to be given a proper viewing from myself without any outside interference from Lady Gaga fans. But being able to see this just kind of straight up with people who appreciate film as much as we do, I really, really appreciated the fact that I got to see it this way. The chemistry between Bradley Cooper and Carey Mulligan were fantastic. I love that they didn't shy away from his infidelity in the background. Which I think, if anything, that would probably be the most controversial aspect of the film, was all of that stuff. Especially, again, for those who are not familiar with him behind the scenes. I feel like that's what a lot of people are going to be like talking about, right? And will probably be surprised about. But at the end of the day, it portrays a person who just loves his work, who loves, who has that passion for music. And at the same time also has passion and love for his family. But he also has a zest and love for life and love in general. And he kind of gets carried away, as any creative probably would get carried away. And how that dynamic interfered with his marriage, interfered with his family. But it was not something that he can ever really stop, because that is him. That is who he is. So it's kind of one of those things where you should have known what you got yourself into, because this is me, and I'm not going to change myself for you, or I'll try to stop it, or I'll try to curb it. But he just couldn't, and I wouldn't say it's a downfall, but if anything, that would be like a negative impact within the family, and how it caused a rift. But I just thought overall the movie was just really, really well done and well put together. And I highly recommend it to a lot of people. Blake, for you, who saw this very early on, and I know that because the type of screening you went to, maybe there were some things that were unfinished, or maybe some things that may have been changed around. I don't think so. I feel like they may have just kept everything as is. What was your initial takeaway or feeling reaction when you saw this the first time? And I guess with all this time after you've seen the movie, since you've seen the movie, what kind of still lingers in your memory from watching it the first time?
Yeah, I was blown away by this movie. I really liked Stars Born a lot. I thought Bradley Cooper as a first-time director for that movie blew me away. I also like music films. I like music a lot. And I don't know classical music as well. I remember enjoying the hell out of the music in Star is Born. In this one, I think we all know Leonard Bernstein, at least in some way, or in some way affected by the music that Leonard Bernstein created. Seeing Bradley Cooper playing that role and doing a full transformation so expertly, and I think did a great job directing the film. I remember there's certain moments from the movie that are still in my memory that I really want to go back and see it again and appreciate anew. The acting performance was, in my mind, phenomenal. It was one of the first thoughts I had afterward was, okay, Bradley Cooper's going to get his acting nomination at least, and maybe an Oscar for it. The rest of the performances were fantastic. I remember being curious about like, how is Sarah Silverman going to do?
Yes,
I thought Sarah Silverman did a great job.
Yeah, I forgot to mention her. Yeah, she plays his sister, and
Yep.
I honestly did not know she was in the film. And then when she showed up, I was like, "Holy shit, it's Sarah Silverman!" Okay, is this going to be like a comical thing now? But no, she was actually really good as kind of like a dramatic actress.
We've seen that from a lot of comedians, that they're able to
Yeah.
do that, and they're good with timing and performance. But she did a great job.
Yeah.
Carey Mulligan, absolutely fantastic. To me, that's a shoe-in nomination. And it also, similar to last year, a question with Carey Mulligan after Fabelman's, another question this year would be supporting or lead. But either way, I think there's a nomination for Carey Mulligan, if not a win.
Yeah.
But I also really like biopics, and I know it's a maligned genre when you kind of see the same formula get brought out time and time again. But what was different this time, the biggest takeaway to me from this film is that it was not too dissimilar from Tar, which is a movie that's these two movies are in conversation, even though they never intended to be. It's another piss take on the great man theory of that a lot of biopics historically fell into a problem where, okay, yeah, this guy was a piece of shit and he had a serious drug and alcohol problem and cheated on his wife and drove all his friends and family away and was an absolute bastard. But at the end of the movie, we're all going to go, "Yay, it was worth it. That was so lovely. Thank you for all the cool music." Or there's levels to that, but also there's something kind of silly about just celebrating the hell out of someone through a movie, especially when it's a vanity project, which we've seen from a lot of those movies too. And I think when Bohemian Rhapsody is at the Oscars, it's kind of like a last gasp of that movie taking itself seriously.
Yeah.
And I honestly thought Bohemian Rhapsody overall was successful. I think it was actually one of the worst things that could have happened to it was that it was taken seriously in awards conversations and people had to then go, wait, no, we don't think that's the best movie of the year. This movie, though, doesn't fall into a lot of those traps. And in fact, it does the opposite, where it shows the consequences very harshly of what the impact of him being an absolute bastard, career driven by legacy and passion and obsession for his art. Similar to Tar in that way, it has drastic effects on the people around him. And I remember in particular, which I'm not going to get into it here because it is something about if Carey Mulligan's saying this isn't a biopic, it transcends the genre. There's some creative decisions, and what they choose to focus on is always going to be a question in any movie about, especially about a historical figure, but also like how the script and the direction brings out certain aspects of the story and what it chooses to focus on. Literally, that last scene where we're kind of seeing in a lot of the other biopics, they're showing a glorious moment of the person's come back to her or something like that. We're seeing this person still in some ways a monster. And I can't get that scene out of my head. I won't detail it because I would rather someone seeing the movie for the first time to get to experience that fresh. But I remember like that's a scene I haven't gotten out of my head more than anything else. All that to say, it is a very sweaty film. It is you can see the amount of effort that Bradley Cooper is putting into it, and this is an intense creative character who's talking a lot, staying up all night, lots of coffee and cigarettes going on, and so much passion. I think Bradley Cooper's really good at playing that dude who's just too intense and too smart and has a certain charisma and charm and is able to kind of get his way with people. Bradley Cooper's made for that. And then as far as the directing goes, I'm still not quite sure because it's pretty different from Star is Born in a lot of ways. I want to see what he does with future directing decisions, but it was another time I said, holy shit, this guy can definitely direct the hell out of a film. I want to hear more what other people think once the movie's out. And I could see people being kind of irked by it. I could see some people saying, oh, it's no Star is Born. I could see people saying, oh, he leveled up. I honestly am curious what the general consensus will be. But overall, my impression and why I'm excited to see it again is all of those reasons, that between the performances, the script, and the story that they're choosing to tell and how they choose to tell it with the directing all throughout the film was expertly crafted and sometimes a difficult watch, but definitely a thorough movie experience for sure.
So it's interesting that you kind of brought up the whole like you're curious as to what other people think, because for a movie like this, especially for New York Film Festival, this was like a highly anticipated movie for a lot of people because it's going to be the first time most of us are getting a chance to see it. Bradley Cooper, I think it's well thought or felt within the industry that he is a student of Hollywood. You know, like I feel like he kind of makes it so that he puts himself like in people's presence to learn from them. Like I feel like he kind of does that. And it's interesting because when you see the trajectory of his career, this is a dude that was like on a TV show called Alias, right? And I remember when I first saw him there, I was like, I hate this guy. This guy just like he just sucks. But that's the result of the character, right? But for some reason I kind of just associated him with that character. And then we saw him like in Wedding Crashers, and he also played like an asshole in that one too. So I'm like, this guy just is probably like a biggest jerk. But then when you hear him in interviews, he sounds like he's so appreciative of like the craft and appreciative of like all these creators and this and that and blah 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 that. And then you see him like sitting down or hanging out with all of these like prestigious members of Hollywood and everything. So I feel like he purposely puts himself in these situations where he learns from people and he shows appreciation and all that. And now it's coming out on what he does himself. He's very selective these days on what he does, right? And I feel like he also pays a lot of attention on directing now. Like this is next level. This is how he levels up himself. Is that this is what he wants to do. So me personally, I would say that this is definitely a level up from A Star is Born, because even though, yes, I was distracted a lot and all that, I still recognized the movie for what it was. And I could say for someone who is new to directing, that was a pretty good movie, like in my opinion. Like, you know, again, even though I was distracted multiple times, but still for the movie itself, I thought it was a very well done movie. This is like a whole other level, I think, if you put them side by side. You know, if you watched one and then watched this one afterwards, totally different. And you could see like how he's matured in this period of time. And then I was trying really my best to listen to what other people thought about it. And I did hear a lot of mixed feelings. I heard a lot of people saying like, oh, this was a great movie. And then I heard some people saying it was okay, like that, like not what I was expecting. Or I heard someone say, kind of cookie cutterish in a way, like that. And I was like, wow, really? Like, I'm really, really shocked by all that. And now I'm looking on Rotten Tomatoes. First of all, Rotten Tomatoes is I feel like they're their trash site now, especially when, you know, the reports came out that critics were getting paid to leave good ratings on purpose from studios. But I feel like Rotten Tomatoes has always had like a bad reputation, because, and especially like the way they handle their rating system. But as I just for the sake of argument, just for looking here, I'm just reading some of these things, and I'm just gonna pay attention to some of the top critics on the site. So one of them says, with Maestro, Bradley Cooper has essentially reduced Leonard Bernstein's boundary-pushing life and legacy to the sum total of its most accessible parentheses read audience-friendly elements, his interpersonal relationships. And this person gave it a 2 out of 4. Another person here who gave it a 3.5 out of 4. All that Bradley Cooper wanted to capture is on the screen. The actor who clowned through the Hangover franchise and aptly directed A Star is Born has created a work of art. So you see like two different sides of the spectrum.
Does that first one feel correct to you?
No,
maybe I'm missing the point they're
I
trying to
don't
make,
agree with that.
I don't get that.
Yeah,
as a criticism.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that to me doesn't make a lot of sense unless he's expecting something different. I feel like this person had an expectation.
Which is the worst version of criticism,
right?
In my opinion.
Yeah,
well, I don't ever care. Oh, I wish that they had made this instead. Well, they didn't. What did you think about the thing they did make? I'm actually thinking maybe Lydia Tarr paid that reviewer to put that review on Rotten Tomatoes.
No, absolutely.
Maybe somebody can look into that.
All right, I love this one right here. Johnny Olesinski from the New York Post. Listen to this one. Nothing Cooper does is organic or authentic, and his show-off performance is always stilted. He arduously thinks through every single choice. It's time to scream into a pillow, cue the laugh, ready, set, cry. This guy just doesn't like Bradley Cooper, I think.
What did Bradley Cooper do something to him?
Yeah,
is that guy okay?
This guy is taking a personal attack on Bradley Cooper. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. It's like, wow, this guy has something against this guy.
It was a sweaty film, and I honestly, there's a version where I kind of get that. There's people who will criticize someone for being too much of a try-hard.
Sure.
And if you can see the effort, and in some ways that's the case, but also I think this person might be confused because this is a story about someone who is similar to that criticism of Bradley Cooper.
Right.
So I don't think you would necessarily want to take that away and show, oh yeah, Leonard Bernstein, he was a breezy dude. He didn't really care. He just kind of showed up, blah his way through life, and things came easy for him. No, this dude was fucking sweating his ass off through life, trying so hard to either be liked or to make something important and great. I
Yeah.
think that's part of why we see in both Stars Born and this film. And yeah, in general, Bradley Cooper, it's not necessarily an entirely unfair knock. You're talking about how we know Bradley Cooper is the Wedding Crashers guy and the Alias guy. To me, I think of Bradley Cooper as the student at Inside the Actor's Studio,
Oh,
where
right.
he's
Absolutely.
raising his hand and like,
Yep.
I have a question, and he asks a very serious question about how
Yep.
to be a serious actor.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily incorrect, but I don't think that itself, that ad hominem, takes away from the movie. And if he were to keep directing and playing Bradley Cooper-ass characters, I think it kind of works. Like the guy in Limitless
Yeah.
is a great role for Bradley Cooper.
Oh, yeah,
I
absolutely.
think that's one of the best things, aside from directing, one of the best things Bradley Cooper has done is chosen really good characters that Bradley Cooper can play.
Right.
Whereas some people would go, oh, I actually want to start playing the nice guy. I don't think that really
And it
works
doesn't
for
work.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like when someone tries to push themselves too hard into a different type of role just to
Yeah.
be different, but they can't do it. You know, it's just like I could not
If he'd gone for the Ed
imagine.
Helms role or the Zach Galifianakis role in Hangover, it
Right.
would not have worked very well. Instead, no, he's the fucking smarmy, kind of greasy, sweaty asshole, but still sexy and gets his way with his friends, and that's kind of
Right.
like
And
generally that's the Bradley Cooper palette.
right. And in a way can still be charming too, even though
Yep.
you don't want to admit to that. Like it could still be very much that, right? So
Yep.
that goes back to what I said before, is that he is a student of the craft. He is a student of this industry, and I feel like he is, maybe the better way to say it, he is a nerd like us when it comes to movies. He's in himself a nerd of the industry, right? So that's why he wants to know every little thing. He wants to pick everything up. And does that translate into pompousness and all that? Maybe in some people's eyes, but I don't personally see it that way anymore.
The criticism, to me, it's too simple and easy of a criticism to say, oh, they care too much. Oh,
Yeah.
they're trying too hard.
Yeah.
The alternative of that, I think that's just someone looking for something to dislike.
Sure.
For someone who is successful or has done something, it's in some ways it's the opposite of a criticism. It's like, oh, good job, you put in a lot of effort. And sure, if you can see the effort, maybe that's not always ideal. In this film, I think it makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it sounds like this guy's just big mad about something.
Yeah, I think he just
he just needed to have a negative review for some reason.
What does this mean for, award season and Oscar race and all that? Because I feel like now is the time to really start talking about these type of, subjects when it comes to the movies that we talk about, especially like a movie like this, where we already know the Academy, Hollywood in general, they love stories about Hollywood. They love stories about prestigious people, creativity. Leonard Bernstein not only was a composer, but he has also scored a lot of Broadway plays. So he's well known across the board. So he could be considered as kind of like legendary icons in not just Hollywood, but just, creativity in general, especially like in the music industry and all that.
I mean, we do also know that Hollywood loves a Hollywood person, right?
Yes.
And he has an Oscar nomination. He did the music for West Side Story.
Yep.
That plays well, especially at a place like New York Film Festival.
Sure.
At a place like Lincoln Center, but I think in Hollywood also.
So as far as like awards considerations here for this, one of the things we didn't talk about enough, I think, is kind of like the camera work. I talked about like the use of color and portraying periods of color and all that, but they did some really, really interesting camera shots and camera situations. I love the beginning where, you see a young Leonard Bernstein in the creative apartments above Carnegie Hall. And then, kind of as he gets the call that he has to replace one of the composers that night because that person is sick, you see him like rushing out of the apartment, running through the hall, but it's all done from like an above skyline shot as he's busting into the balcony, and you see Carnegie Hall like that. Like shots like that are just so masterfully done. And in a way, it was kind of like a one shot on its own, even though there was some kind of edits in there. But, really nicely hidden edits. They did a lot of great work as far as cinematography in this film. But if there's one thing I know for sure that needs to be talked about and needs to be in consideration, it has to be the makeup design, because to be able to transform Bradley Cooper into not only just into Leonard Bernstein, but Leonard Bernstein through the years. You know, you got to see the young version, you got to see the middle aged version, and then you got to see the really, really old senior Bernstein. To have to deal with all the prosthetics and the sweat and the clothes and all that. Like, I think they did such a great job in portraying his looks through the years. One of the great things that the makeup person and the costume person talked about at the press conference was there was one particular look of Bernstein that they really loved, and that was him in I believe it was in the 80s, where he had like the neckerchief, and it was like one of the only times he had a full on beard, and he had like the striped shirt and kind of like the sailor like kind of pants, like the kind of chinos and all that. Bradley Cooper said that was like one of his favorite looks, because he calls it like the like kind of like a pirate look. Like this was like Leonard's pirate look. But the fact that they paid so close attention to all of that stuff, I think that's something for sure needs to be acknowledged. And well, how well they did a lot of that stuff. You said directing wise, maybe it's going to be tough for him to get nominated as director for this. Do we see him being nominated for actor? You know, do we see Carey Mulligan getting nominated? Maya Hawke, does she maybe get a consideration for playing his daughter, which she plays more of a part later on in the movie, like a heavier part in the movie. But I thought she was very, very impactful with her time on screen, especially when she has the conversations with her dad about his extracurricular activity. You know, very heartfelt conversations and moments there. What do you feel are possibilities more so as far as this is concerned, as far as nominations and all?
Yeah, I think in some previous years, Bradley Cooper might get nominated for director for this. This year is particularly difficult. You have two spots possibly locked up from Barbenheimer.
Sure.
You have so many options: Past Lives, Yorgos Lanthimos. I don't think
Scorsese.
he Scorsese. I mean, the fact that like Scorsese is not a lock is incredible. You have so many options for director. I don't think that's very realistic. I think Bradley Cooper is going to win the best actor. I'll say it
Wow.
now. I don't know that to be true, of course,
But that's your
but
feeling.
I don't. Yeah, and there's also not a ton of other options, and it makes a lot of sense. Especially, there's another version where him not getting a director nomination actually helps him lock in a best actor
Mm-hmm.
here. Other than that, Carey Mulligan, like I said, definitely a nomination, possibly the actual Oscar. We don't know if she'll run supporting or lead. That'll be
Mm-hmm.
interesting again. My Hawk, I'm not sure this gets many more down the line, but it's one of those performances I could see it. Depending on how strong that category is and how things shake out. And what often happens with supporting is a movie will surprise people with that third, fourth, or fifth spot, and all those best laid predictions. That's just a much more up in the air category
Mm-hmm.
until you get closer and deeper into Oscar season. So past that, to me, makeup, absolute shoe in. I would be surprised if it didn't get costume, especially in recent years. We've seen less of the 1800s period pieces and more of the recent history period pieces getting costume nominations. So hair and makeup, costume, and then I think all the sound. The sound nomination, film editing, cinematography. I could see all of those getting nominated.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe screenplay, but I could be wrong. I think it's an original screenplay, not adapted from a book.
Yeah, it's
If it was an
original as well.
adaptation, maybe that's more likely. I don't think it gets in for screenplay.
Mm-hmm.
It was good and it was fast, and there's parts that are really talky. So maybe it does. I'm honestly, I don't have that landscape in my head of how that might shake out.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, we're kind of looking at uh, it possibly doing very well in or at least nominated in picture, actor, actress, or supporting TBD, sound, editing, cinematography, down the line, like 7 nominations. It could be one of the leaders there's also a chance it doesn't do very well. It gets some negative press, something else. Bradley Cooper has a bad interview cycle or says something weird, and it gets maybe one nomination. That's not impossible. It's possible it could be the biggest winner that night. I'm not sure, and I'm genuinely curious how this movie plays with general audiences.
I think score is another one. I mean, you have such classic music played throughout the entire film. You know, pieces that he's conducted, pieces that he's composed. And again, we already talked about like how Hollywood loves that, right? How Hollywood loves throwbacks to the good old times and all that. So I could definitely see possibly score getting a nomination for sure. But you also do feel like this could get the nomination for Best Picture.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. I guess we'll see. You have, but again, like, with the kind of year that we've had, we have, what's the most Best Picture nominations they can have? 10, right? So, yeah, with Past Lives, Oppenheimer, Barbie. You think Barbie will get nominated for Best Picture?
For sure.
Yeah.
I think not only is it like the Greta Gerwig, it's a quality cinema product, but it's also a good Hollywood product too.
Right.
And when you make that much money, they're kind of looking for an excuse, and they definitely have it with that film.
Yeah. Okay. The only thing I will say, one last thing I'll say here is, as far as a Best Actor, he may have some stiff competition with Barry Keoghan. When I tell you that this person, who we already know, we've seen Barry, do multiple things already by now. This could potentially be his major come out, his major and now we already know he got nominated last year for Banshees of Inisherin, but that was like a supporting role, right? I could see him potentially land a Best Actor nom here, and maybe the biggest competition I think Bradley will have in this category. Carey Mulligan's in multiple films this year. She's also in Saltburn in a smaller role, so maybe the fact that she's in multiple movies, how that kind of highlights a performance, right? Because it's in everyone's mind. Oh, I saw her in this, I saw her in that. We've seen that already before, where if someone has multiple films in one year, they could potentially get nominated just for something. Same thing could be said about Paul Mescal too, who has multiple projects this year. So, but yeah, it'll be really, really interesting. But I do agree that I think Maestro will be a big talking point, especially for award season and potentially Oscars there. But again, it all boils down to what's the reception going to be like from other people. It begs the question for you listening out there. Is this a movie that you're looking forward to? Are you excited for this when it comes out? Are you a fan of Leonard Bernstein? Are you a fan of Bradley Cooper? Are you a fan of Carey Mulligan? Let us know. Hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. Make sure to check out the link in the description of this episode or scan the QR code you see on the screen right now and find out how you can get unlimited data for only $15 a month. Save a whole ton of money on your monthly cell phone bill without sacrificing any of the quality. No contracts to worry about, you can cancel anytime, and the transferring process is so easy. You can keep your phone number or get a new one. Need a new phone? They got you covered as well. Over a year ago, I switched from Verizon without any hesitation, and it's not just because I found Ryan Reynolds to be a sexy mother. Shut your mouth. I'm just talking about Mint Mobile, but I guarantee you if you give Mint Mobile a shot, you'll understand why I made that switch, and you too will be a happy Mint Mobile customer. So once again, check out Mint Mobile, link in the description of this episode or QR code on your screen. Check them out.
For full audio episodes of the MovieTime Podcast, make sure to follow and subscribe to the LOWKEY GEEK channel on your favorite podcast platform. New episodes are uploaded every week.